What's up, everybody? It's Bobby B from Raytown Productions, and today I'm so excited to share with you this video. This is my investigation into finding out if all the rumors online are true about sample rate conversion between high sample rates like 96 kilohertz per second or 48 kilohertz per second down to the CD standard 44.1 kilohertz per second, if any of that matters. And the differences between two different algorithms. I'm using Cubase for this example, and then also a free one by Voxengo called R8Brain. It looks and has been highly regarded as an awesome sample rate conversion algorithm. So we're going to dive in deep, look at how they both affect the quality of the audio, and end this discussion once and for all. We are going to look at two different examples. One is a computer-generated signal, so a sine wave. Also, I'm looking at a square wave, and we'll also do a sine sweep to listen to how the different sample rate converters handle those in a more empirical sense. And then we'll also give an example for a band that I mixed and mastered called Deer Spring to give you a real context of what the differences might be and how they affect the overall quality of the final song. So I'm so excited to dive in, so let's get started. Okay, so starting off, I'm just going to play the different signals I generated electronically. So they are perfectly represented both in 44 kilohertz per second and 96 kilohertz per second. So we can phase, invert, and subtract the differences between the samples. This is the sine wave that I generated. The standard 440A tone. I've done also a square wave. It sounds like this. Really terrible to hear. And then also we have a sweep. So if your speakers are loud, I'd suggest turning them down because it goes from 30 hertz all the way up to 22K. Sounds like this. So this will give us the full range of all the different frequencies, so we can hear how 96K samples are being converted down to 44K, which is at CD standard. So this next clip I'm going to play is a 96 kilohertz per second sample of the sine wave, downsampled to 44.1 kilohertz using Cubase's algorithm. So you'll hear it sounds very, very similar, and I'll switch back and forth after I play this once. So I don't hear anything different, essentially. Okay, if we go back to the original perfectly rendered sample, it sounds like this. We go back to Cubase. Go back to the original. It's pretty much exactly the same. I don't hear any significant artifacts or anything. Now, for the next example I'm going to show is the same sine wave, but this time it's converted with R8Brain, which is, again, that free sample rate converter you can get online. I'll add a link to the description below. So here is the converted from 96 to 44. Again, it sounds very similar. Here's the original. Back to the R8Brain. Original. I can't hear anything different in my setup. Let's check out the difference in the sample rate conversion if it's a square wave, because square waves are notoriously difficult because square waves are essentially impossible because you have two amplitudes at the same point. But it just rest assured that it's very difficult to manipulate these types of waveforms transparently. So here is the rendered 44 kilohertz per second square wave. Sounds pretty awful. And this is Cubase's version, downsampled from 96 kilohertz to 44. Sounds just as terrible. Let's go back to the original. And back to the Cubase downsampled. And original. So they sound pretty similar to me. It sounds like there's the attack or some of the high end is been removed, it seems like, when it was downsampled. It's hard to say what sounds better or what sounds worse. It sounds pretty bad in general. So now let's look at what R8Brain does to the downsampling. So here's the original, and then we'll go to the R8 converted. Okay, to R8. Back to original. Back to R8. There's a little bit of the very top end that seems to be less aggressive, I guess, with these downsampled files compared to the original rendering of it. Next up is that sweep. So I'll just go back and forth between the sweep. We'll start with the perfectly rendered sweep, and then we'll go to the Cubase downsampled sweep. Okay, switching to Cubase. Back to the rendered original. Cubase. One more time, back to original. And Cubase. Hard to hear anything. Can't really tell. Let's do this again for the R8Brain. So again, this is supposed to be the more highly regarded, better quality sample rate converter. So original. R8. Original. R8. Original. So again, can't really hear much of a difference at all. Again, I'm not really detecting anything. It sounds very similar to me. I wanted to take this a step further and took those downsampled files between Cubase and R8 and phase inverted one of them to cancel out the similarities. So anything that wasn't changed in the original source got removed. So we were listening to only the differences between all those samples that I just played. So the first thing we're going to do is listen to what Cubase conversion from 96 down to 44 did to the audio compared to the perfectly rendered version. But can't really hear much, right? We pull up a EQ, we can look and see what's happening. And down here, we see that there is some movement. So there's some differences, but it's at negative 110 dB full scale. So it is extremely quiet. I would argue that 95% of all studios that are out there do not have a noise floor at negative 110. So this is almost impossible to hear. So to hear what this actually sounds like, I've added several limiters in a row to increase the volume by 30 dB at a time. So I'm going to activate these one by one. So we had to add 30 dB there. Here's 60 dB. Still almost can't even hear it. Here's now 90 dB. And now we can start to hear what the effect of that sample rate conversion is. And then here's another 11 dB, just kind of bring it up to the same volume. So that sounds pretty bad. So that is what's happening to our signal for these sine waves for the Cubase conversion. Let's take a look at what happens if we do the R8Brain. I have the same exact setup. This is how the R8Brain conversion sounds. There's almost no of those sharp, like stabby sound effects that we get like this, right? You hear all the ringing. R8Brain doesn't have that. You can see on the equalizer here that it almost looks like noise. So it's almost like, so whatever sample rate conversion that they're doing, they're effectively able to get rid of all that sharp ringing sound or aliasing that we hear. So it's probably has something to do with their low pass filtering on their sample rate conversion. But again, this is just doing a investigation into it, not really into the mathematics or physics of what's going on. If we listen to the differences with the square wave, we'll start with Cubase. Let's play this back. So you can hear these are the differences that are occurring from the sample rate conversion. This is a lot more prevalent. This doesn't have any gain added in. This is audible in the range that we're looking at. So let me play the original, and I'll switch over to the difference. And since we can actually hear this, this is something that will affect your song or your mix. So the original square wave is this loud, and the sample rate conversion is essentially adding this amount of audio. So that is a noticeable difference with this square wave. So that was very interesting to me. So if we listen to R8Brain, it sounds like this. Also very, very similar. Okay, I'm going to switch between R8Brain and Cubase, and you'll hear they're essentially the same. So this is Cubase, R8Brain, back to Cubase, back to R8Brain. So it's essentially the same. The sample rate conversion for square waves is not good. So it's going to add noticeable volume increase and add this unpleasant ringing and noise to your audio. Let's listen to the difference in those sine sweeps now. So this is looking at the conversion from, again, Cubase, from 96K down to 44. I've had to add 30 decibels of gain to make it loud enough so you can actually hear the difference. Again, it's pretty quiet here. I'll play it without any of the gain added. So actually, it gets more audible as it gets to higher pitch. So with the 30 decibels of gain, it brings it up pretty loud, so you can hear it. So essentially, it's canceling out most of the sine wave, but it's changing it enough where we're unable to phase cancel out the majority of that sweep. So if you have a sweep and you're doing this sample rate conversion, you will have some significant artifacts, especially as it gets to higher frequencies. Same with the R8Brain. Let me pull up this EQ so you can see. So exactly same problem. You can see this also has 30 decibels of gain. Okay, so same situation. We have uncanceled frequencies because of sample rate conversion, but you know what? The Cubase and R8Brain still sound pretty much identical. So this is where it gets interesting. I took these differences between the Cubase converted and the R8Brain converted audio, phase flipped one so they cancel out so we can hear the difference between the two algorithms. What I wanted to know is Cubase really as bad as everybody says it is, or does it not really matter? So by canceling out the common sine sweep that we heard, we're able to hear the differences strictly in the sample rate conversion algorithm and not due to any other effect. And so for this example, I had to increase the gain by 96 decibels so you can hear it, but it's very interesting. Let me show you. I'll pull up I'm pulling up a equalizer so you can watch the frequencies that we're seeing. I also had to add a 14 kilohertz low pass filter because there's significant volume above 20K, and I didn't want to blow anybody's tweeters out. So check this out. It almost sounds like we're being attacked by aliens, right? So what we're seeing here, the differences between these two, is essentially this is showing that we have significant aliasing in the Cubase's sample rate converter. So you have this foldback aliasing occurring as this is sweeping up, and it's causing all of this chaos in our audio. So again, I'm just going to show you. Watch. You can see as all these frequencies are running around and causing these terrible artifacts. So that was really interesting to me. I never would have thought that the differences would have been that significant. And they're not just in the high frequencies. They go all the way down to the low sub-frequencies as well. But again, remember, I'm increasing the gain by 96 decibels here, okay? So if I get rid of all this stuff and I just play the difference, you won't hear it, right? It's playing right now. And I'm willing to bet you cannot hear anything. So even though it sounds crazy once we bring the volume up, it's really not impacting our song much at all. So that's great. We've done a bunch of empirical tests showing that under perfect circumstances with sine waves and square waves and these sine sweeps, what the differences between the sample rate converters can do. But how about in an actual song? How do these sample rate converters react to real music that is dynamic and have multiple frequencies and doesn't behave like a simple sine wave? This first song by Dear Spring sounds something like this. Okay, so you get an idea how it sounds. And for this example, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I'm doing sample conversion at a worst case scenario. So what I've done is taken the song, which was recorded at 48 kilohertz per second. I've upsampled it to 96 and then subsequently downsampled it to 44 kilohertz. So we've done two different sample conversions. I'm going to switch back and forth between the original source that we have and then Cubase's sample rate converter going up and then back down. So let's start there. We'll start with the original. Okay, we're going to switch to the up converted, then down converted. Back to the original. Back to the converted. Back to original. So you probably noticed, like what I noticed, is that there really isn't a lot different. In fact, in a blind listening, I don't know if I can necessarily pick out in between the two. We'll do the same test, but this time using the R8Brain, and you'll see the similar results, right? So let's play the original, and I'll switch between the R8 up converted, then down converted. R8. Original. As you can hear, there's really not any noticeable difference. And like I said, this is worst case scenario. To listen to the differences between Cubase and that R8 sample conversion, I phase inverted the original, subtracted it from the converted samples to get the difference. And so let's just listen to what the differences sound like. So again, I had to increase the gain by 90 decibels to hear a difference between up sampling and then down sampling it from the original. And this is what it sounds like. So you can probably hear it's tinny, it's irritating. I did also put a low pass filter at 16K because there is significant high frequency content, which I didn't want to blow out anybody's speakers. It's very subtle, but there's a lot of ringing and it is annoying. If we check out the R8Brain version, I'll play that right now. I'll switch it. It sounds a little bit louder, actually. And if we look at it with the equalizer, I'll show you both of these. So the one on the right is Cubase, and it seems like it's lower in volume compared to the R8Brain. So that was very interesting. So upsampling it and then downsampling it, Cubase seemed to handle that better than the R8Brain. I don't know why, but it's something interesting that I found. Okay. So now what we can do is take the difference again of those difference, if that makes any sense at all. So let's listen to what that would sound like. So this is 96 decibels I'm adding to hear it. This is essentially the perfect difference between the two algorithms. And it sounds, it's so quiet. Again, it's almost 100 dB below our noise, or below zero. And while it does sound terrible, it doesn't really seem to impact much. If you were to, for example, here's the volume of the original mixes that we have, right? So we have this, and then I'll switch to the noise and sample distortion and aliasing added from the sample conversion, and you hear it's so quiet that there's almost, I would argue that there's no way you could possibly hear the differences in the sample rate conversion. So here's the original song. And now, here's the noise introduced and the aliasing introduced from the sample rate conversion. If you can hear that, that is incredible, okay? Because I need to add 90 decibels again before you can start to hear it. Okay, same thing. Let's go back. Original volume. Now let's check out R8Brain, which in this case seems to be the worst of the two. So here we go. Can't really hear anything. Go back to the song. So in the real world case, we have a single track and you're down and up sample rate converting everything. The amount that it's changing is so subtle. I will argue that with this setup, you're never going to be able to hear it in the mix. So there's no use wasting your time trying to figure out why, what sample rate converter to use. For rock and metal and stuff like that, hip hop, probably never going to be an issue. But maybe under certain circumstances, you might be able to hear it in a highly dynamic musical context for something like an orchestra or something. But I would argue that with the number of microphones used to capture an orchestra or a concert like that, you're going to have a higher noise floor than you'll be able to detect based on just the sample rate converter. And just to explore this a little bit more, what I've done is I've taken the differences. So the noise that's introduced and the artifacts that's introduced into the track from the sample rate converter, and I've duplicated it over and over and over and over again. And I wanted to find out how many tracks it would take before I could hear the artifacts caused from the sample rate conversion to be noticeable in a song when it's being played back. So I've had to sum all these tracks because they were eating up so much processing power, I could barely play my session. So here is 25 tracks. So if you did sample rate conversion on 25 tracks and took all that noise and compiled it in a single track, this is what it would sound like. I'm going to pull up an equalizer for you. Hold on a second. So you can see how quiet it is. And like I said, this is 25 times. So if you had a song that had 25 tracks and you sample converted everything, this is what you're going to get. Okay? It's sitting at about minus 100 dB. You're not going to be able to hear this. Okay? What about 50? So I did 50. Here's what 50 looks like. If you can hear this again, I would be really impressed. Okay? Just for example, here's the song again. And here's 50 of those songs converted with the noise. So, okay, so that's fine. I still can't hear it. 100. Let's listen to 100 different tracks. I can start to hear something, I think. Maybe it's the air conditioning turning on. I don't know. But at this point, maybe it's audible. But in the context of the song, again, I'm of the opinion that you're not going to hear it. So going back, if you can hear this while this is playing, it's pretty impressive, right? What about 200 tracks? Okay, now I think I can actually hear it very, very quietly. In the context of music, you're not going to hear it, right? 500. Okay, so you turn your speakers up, you can hear some of the ringing now, okay? I wouldn't recommend that because if I go back to the song, it's going to blow your ears out, right? So again, if I do sample rate conversion on 500 tracks going up to 96 and back down, I would still argue you can't hear it in the mix. What about 1,000? Okay, now we're starting to hear things. But if I play the song and I take it away and put it back in, I bet you still can't hear it. I can't hear it. I've went to the quietest part of the song and I can't hear it, any of the aliasing or artifacts. So what about 2,000 of those tracks? Sample rate converted up, then back down. Okay. Sounds like this. And in the context of the song, I would say that now you might, with very, very careful listening, notice that there's some artifacts and aliasing, okay? So this is with it in and out. So you might hear it a little bit on the vocals and the air and the cymbals. You'll hear some of those bright, harsh harmonics or the aliasing artifacts. So I think this is pretty conclusive. This has settled my issue I've had with sample rate converters and me on this quest thinking that there's something that is going to make my mixes or masters sound way, way better. And, maybe that's the sample rate conversion. I think this pretty much proves and puts the nail in the coffin once and for all that, for at least for this set of tests, that with music, you can convert the song up and down 2,000 times before you start to hear these artifacts in the mix. So I certainly don't think you're going to be able to hear any difference by using Cubase's sample rate converter or $1,000 sample rate converter. I don't think it matters. Now, there certainly are some subpar sample rate converters where, yeah, you can hear the artifacts right away. But in terms of like the standard software people are using to master and mix music nowadays, I don't think this is ever going to be an issue for anybody unless your track counts over 2,000. So there is something else I want to point out. There is a website that has done a bunch of this sample rate conversion analysis already. So it's called src.infinitewave.ca. And this graphically shows you the noise and aliasing introduced into the different algorithms used to convert the sample rate. So just to show you the two that I used today was Cubase 9.5 and the R8Brain, the free version, right here. So this is comparing a sweep of these two different algorithms. The darker the color means the quieter it is, so the less noise it introduces. So you can see R8Brain is black everywhere, whereas Cubase has all these crazy lines and it's purple everywhere. This visually tells you that the R8Brain should, in theory, be a better sample rate conversion according to this sweep test. Now, if we look at Cubase, what all these purple lines are showing is that those are the aliasing artifacts. So what we heard where it sounded like the aliens were taking over, we're hearing all these like purple lines, these dotted lines everywhere. So that was very interesting to me to be able to hear it, because looking at this, it's hard to understand what it sounds like, right? But now that we've gone through it and we heard it, this would sound like that. But remember, we had to increase the volume by almost 100 decibels to hear this. So even though this looks way worse than this graphic in this representation, it doesn't sound bad. And again, it's something that I don't think you're going to be able to hear in the mix at all. So don't get hung up on this. I'm using Cubase 9.5 right now, so my sample rate conversion looks like this, and I don't think any of my mixes sound terrible. Okay. Now there are some that I've noticed that look pretty terrible. I just don't have a way of testing them currently, but I will at some point, hopefully. For example, this. Okay, this one you might hear some ringing and stuff. So like I said earlier, for basic software that people are using nowadays, I don't think this is something where we're ever going to have a problem with sample rate converters not being of high enough quality. But when you're using something like this, it might become problematic. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have a strong opinion, leave it in the comments below. I want to hear it. If I've said something that might have not been 100% accurate, please correct me. So thanks for watching. Give me a like if you liked it. Subscribe. I'll be adding more videos, and hope to see you next time. Thanks again.
With the best, the beat and the feet, the villain. My confidence is straight to the ceiling, so you can say that.
You said he couldn't take the cold.
Your close when it's toxic, take off.
We'll leave the greatest when we. 'Cause girl, I want you to get a little closer.